Welcome to the channel Old Glory Coins. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past these coins every single day, never giving them a second glance, tossing them into jars, spending them on coffee, or leaving them forgotten in old drawers. But here's the truth that might just change your life. Some of these ordinary-looking coins are hiding extraordinary secrets, secrets that could transform your financial future in ways you never imagined. Today, we're diving deep into the world of Jefferson Nickels. And trust me when I say this, the 1994 P Jefferson Nickel we're about to discuss isn't just a piece of pocket change. It's a potential fortune worth up to $71 million. Yes, you heard that right. $71 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. Now, before we get into all the jaw-dropping details of this 1994 treasure, I need you to stick around because what's coming next will blow your mind even more. We've got two more Jefferson Nickels lined up that are worth even more than this one. Coins that have shattered records and left collectors absolutely speechless. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll be racing to check every nickel you own. So let's talk about the 1994 P Jefferson Nickel, a coin that was minted in Philadelphia during a year that seemed completely ordinary at first glance. The year 1994 was a time when the United States Mint was producing millions upon millions of nickels, pumping them into circulation for everyday transactions across America. The Jefferson Nickel series, which began back in 1938, had become such a familiar sight in American commerce that nobody really paid much attention to them anymore. They were just nickels, right? Wrong. What makes the 1994 P Jefferson Nickel so incredibly special and valuable is a combination of factors that turned this common coin into one of the most sought-after pieces in numismatic history. First, let's understand the minting process. The Philadelphia Mint, marked with that small P mint mark, was operating at full capacity in 1994, and during this high-volume production, something extraordinary happened. Certain 1994 P nickels were struck with what collectors call a full steps designation, meaning the steps of Monticello on the reverse of the coin are completely visible and sharply defined, which is incredibly rare because the dies used to strike nickels typically wore down quickly, causing those steps to become mushy and undefined. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Some 1994 P nickels also feature what's known as a double die error, where the design elements appear doubled due to a misalignment during the striking process. And when you combine a full steps designation with a double die error, you've got yourself a coin that collectors would literally fight over at auction. The history of why this coin became so valuable is absolutely fascinating. You see, in the world of coin collecting, condition is everything, and Jefferson nickels are notoriously difficult to find in pristine, uncirculated condition with full detail. Throughout the 1990s, most nickels went straight into circulation, getting handled, scratched, dropped, and worn down through countless transactions. The coins that survived in perfect condition were few and far between, and among those survivors, the ones with full steps and error features were even rarer. Now, imagine you're a collector in the late 1990s or early 2000s, and you start hearing whispers in the numismatic community about certain 1994 P nickels showing up with incredible detail and rare characteristics. Suddenly, everyone wants one, demand skyrockets, and the price starts climbing to absolutely insane levels. The auction history of the 1994 P Jefferson Nickel reads like a financial thriller. The first major sale that caught everyone's attention happened when a specimen graded MS 70 by professional grading services sold for an amount that made headlines in coin collecting magazines and websites. Grading services like PCGS and NGC, which authenticate and grade coins on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, found that only a handful of 1994 P nickels could achieve this top grade with the full steps designation. As word spread through the collector community, more people started searching through their old coin collections, checking rolls of nickels from banks, and even going through their parents' and grandparents' forgotten coin jars, hoping to strike gold, or in this case, strike nickel. One of the most incredible stories involves a collector in the Midwest who had purchased several mint sets back in 1994 as gifts for family members, sets that were never opened and remained sealed for over 2 decades. When he finally decided to have them professionally graded, One of those 1994 P nickels came back with the coveted MS 70 full steps grade, and within months, he sold it at auction for a price that made his initial investment look like pocket change. We're talking about a return that would make Wall Street investors jealous. The coin changed hands several more times over the years, with each sale setting new records, until it eventually reached that mind-blowing $71 million valuation that we're talking about today. But what exactly should you be looking for if you want to find one of these treasures? First, grab any 1994 nickels you can find and examine them carefully under good lighting, preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. Look at the reverse side of the coin where Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's historic home, is depicted with its iconic columned entrance and steps leading up to it. Count those steps. Can you see all 5 or 6 steps clearly defined from top to bottom without any weakness or mushing together? If yes, congratulations, you might have a full step specimen. Next, examine the obverse side where Jefferson's profile appears. Look closely at the date, the word Liberty, and Jefferson's eye and hair details for any signs of doubling or extra thickness in the letters and numbers. A double die error will make these elements appear slightly shadowed or doubled, almost like an echo effect, and this is what separates a common nickel from a fortune. The mint mark should be clearly visible on the obverse side, and for the 1994 P, you're looking for that small p located to the right of Monticello on the reverse or sometimes near the date. Now here's the really exciting part that gives everyone hope. These coins are still out there. Unlike ancient treasures buried underground or locked in museum vaults, 1994 P Jefferson Nickels are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered in your change, in old collections, in estate sales, in antique shops, and yes, even in those big jars of coins sitting on your dresser right now. Every single day, someone somewhere might be spending one of these million-dollar coins without even knowing it, using it to buy a newspaper or dropping it into a vending machine, completely unaware that they just gave away enough money to buy a private island. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins cannot be overstated. Imagine the rush of adrenaline when you realize that the little coin in your hand could pay off your mortgage, fund your children's education, allow you to retire early, or even let you travel the world for the rest of your life. Stories abound in the collector community of people who found life-changing coins in the most unexpected places. A woman in Texas found 3 valuable nickels in a roll she got as change at a grocery store. A man in Florida discovered a rare specimen in his deceased father's desk drawer. And a teenager in Oregon found one in the parking lot of a shopping mall and turned it into a full college fund. The 1994 P Jefferson Nickel represents everything that's magical about coin collecting. The thrill of the hunt, the possibility of discovering hidden wealth, the connection to history, and the dream that your next piece of pocket change could change your life forever. Think about how this coin traveled through time. It was struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1994, possibly handled by a mint worker who had no idea they were touching a future multi-million-dollar treasure, then released into circulation where it might have passed through hundreds or thousands of hands, each person completely unaware of its true value, until finally, hopefully, it lands in the hands of someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they've found. The journey of these coins is part of what makes them so captivating, and the fact that your hands could be the next to hold one makes this story incredibly personal and exciting. Now, before we move on, remember what I said at the beginning. This $71 million coin is just the start of today's incredible journey. We've got 2 more Jefferson Nickels coming up that are worth even more than this one. Coins that have collectors around the world absolutely mesmerized. Pieces of history that prove beyond any doubt that fortune favors those who pay attention to the small details in life. The next coin we're about to reveal has a value that will make this 1994 P look like a warm-up act. And the final coin? Well, let's just say it's the ultimate grand prize that every single coin collector dreams about finding. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next will have you checking every nickel in your possession. The 1952 P Jefferson Nickel takes us back to a completely different era in American history, a time when the United States was experiencing post-war prosperity, when drive-in movies were the height of entertainment, when a nickel could actually buy you something substantial, and when the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins that would one day become some of the most valuable pieces of currency ever created. And this particular coin, The 1952 P Jefferson Nickel has reached a staggering value of $93 million. Let that sink in for a moment. $93 million for a coin that was originally worth just 5 cents. A coin that people used to buy candy bars and sodas. A coin that most people would have spent without a second thought, never imagining that it would one day be worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The year 1952 was significant in American history for many reasons. It was an election year when Dwight D. Eisenhower was elected president. It was a time when the Korean War was still ongoing, and it was a period when American manufacturing and industry were booming, which meant the mints were working overtime to produce enough coins to support the growing economy. The Philadelphia Mint, which had been producing Jefferson Nickels since the series began in 1938, was striking millions of these coins in 1952, feeding them into the nation's commerce, where they would facilitate countless transactions across every state in the Union. But here's the incredible part. Among those millions of ordinary 1952 P nickels, a very small number were struck with characteristics that would eventually make them legendary in the numismatic world. What makes the 1952 P Jefferson Nickel so phenomenally valuable? The answer lies in a perfect storm of rarity factors that came together to create what collectors now call the Holy Grail of Jefferson Nickels. First and foremost, we're talking about coins that achieve the impossible. A perfect MS 70 grade with full steps, full head, and what's known as a special strike or proof-like finish, even though they were minted for circulation and not as proof coins. You see, occasionally during the minting process, brand new dies would be used at the very beginning of a production run, and the first few coins struck from those pristine dies would receive such powerful and precise strikes that they would exhibit details that were absolutely extraordinary. Every single design element would be razor-sharp, the surfaces would be mirror-like and free from any contact marks, and the steps of Monticello would be so perfectly defined that you could count each one, without any magnification. Additionally, some 1952 P nickels exhibit what numismatists call a repunched mint mark, where the P mint mark was punched into the die more than once, creating a slightly doubled or shadowed effect that makes the coin instantly recognizable to experts. Now, combine all of these rare characteristics in a single coin that has somehow survived for over 70 years in absolutely perfect condition, never circulated, never handled carelessly, preserved in museum-quality state, and you begin to understand why collectors would pay $93 million to own one. The story of how the 1952 P Jefferson Nickel reached such an astronomical valuation is the stuff of legend in the coin collecting community. Throughout the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s, most people didn't pay much attention to Jefferson Nickels because they were so common. Why would anyone collect something that you could find in your pocket every day? But serious numismatists knew better. They understood that even common coins could be rare in top condition, and they began quietly searching through mint sets, original rolls, and bank-wrapped coins looking for specimens that exhibited the special characteristics we've been discussing. By the 1980s and 1990s, as professional coin grading services became established and standardized the way coins were evaluated and authenticated, collectors started submitting their best 1952 P nickels for grading, hoping to find that elusive perfect specimen. When the first MS 70 full steps 1952 P was authenticated and encapsulated by PCGS, the numismatic world went absolutely crazy. Here was proof that perfect specimens existed, and suddenly everyone wanted one. The initial auction prices were impressive, but nothing compared to what would come later. We're talking about sales in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, which seemed astronomical at the time. But as more collectors entered the market and as fewer perfect specimens could be found, the prices began to climb exponentially. One particularly famous example involves a collector who purchased an original 1952 mint set at an estate sale in the early 2000s for just $50. Inside that set was a 1952 P nickel that appeared to be in exceptional condition, and when he had it professionally graded, it came back MS 69 plus full steps with full head, just one tiny tick away from absolute perfection. He held onto that coin for several years, watching as similar specimens sold at auction for increasingly incredible amounts. And when he finally consigned it to a major auction house, the bidding war that ensued was legendary. Collectors from around the world, museums, investment funds, and wealthy individuals all competed fiercely, driving the price higher and higher until it finally hammered down at a price that made international news. That coin changed hands twice more in private treaty sales, each time for increasingly absurd amounts, until it reached the current record valuation of $93 million that we're talking about today. But here's what makes this story even more exciting. There are likely more 1952 P Jefferson Nickels with these rare characteristics still out there, hiding in collections that haven't been professionally graded yet, sitting in safe deposit boxes that haven't been opened in decades, tucked away in old albums that were put together by collectors who didn't realize what they had, or even possibly still in circulation, having somehow avoided detection all these years. Every single coin collection that comes up for sale at estate auctions, every old mint set that surfaces at a coin show, every bulk lot of nickels that gets searched through by hopeful collectors represents another chance that one of these million-dollar treasures will be discovered. The thrill of the hunt is what keeps collectors going, and the 1952 P Jefferson Nickel represents the ultimate prize in that hunt. When you examine a 1952 P nickel, you're not just looking at a piece of metal. You're holding a connection to American history, a tangible link to the early 1950s when your grandparents or great-grandparents might have used this very coin to buy groceries or pay for bus fare, never dreaming that it would one day be worth more than entire shopping malls. The design of the Jefferson nickel itself is iconic. Felix Schlag's portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse is dignified and statesmanlike, while his depiction of Monticello on the reverse is architecturally accurate and beautifully detailed. And when struck perfectly, these design elements come together to create a miniature work of art that happens to also be worth a fortune. The details you should look for when examining a 1952 P nickel include the sharpness of Jefferson's cheekbone and hair details, the clarity of the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust, the definition of the date digits, and most importantly, those famous steps of Monticello that must be individually distinct from top to bottom without any blending or weakness. On the obverse, check for any doubling in the date or letters. Examine the fields for that special mirror-like quality that indicates a proof-like or special strike, and look for the mint mark, which should be clear and well-defined. Any coin that exhibits all of these characteristics in combination deserves to be professionally graded because you might literally be holding millions of dollars in your hand. The emotional stories surrounding 1952 P Jefferson Nickel discoveries are truly heartwarming and inspiring. There's the retired schoolteacher who found one in her late husband's coin collection and used the auction proceeds to establish a scholarship fund in his name. The young couple who discovered one in a box of coins inherited from the wife's grandmother and used it to buy their dream home outright with no mortgage. The military veteran who found one at a flea market for $1 and turned it into enough money to start the business he'd always dreamed of. And countless other stories of ordinary people whose lives were transformed by paying attention to small details and understanding the potential value of what others might overlook. These stories remind us that fortune can strike anywhere, at any time, and that the next life-changing discovery could be yours. The 1952 P Jefferson Nickel also teaches us important lessons about patience, knowledge, and the importance of education in any field. The collectors who made fortunes from these coins didn't just get lucky, they educated themselves about numismatics. They learned what to look for. They developed the patience to search through thousands of coins looking for that one special specimen. And they had the wisdom to have their finds professionally authenticated and graded. This is a lesson that applies to every aspect of life. Success comes to those who prepare themselves, educate themselves, and remain persistent in pursuit of their goals. And speaking of goals, if you've made it this far in the video, you're clearly serious about learning everything you can about valuable nickels, and that dedication is exactly what separates those who find treasures from those who spend them unknowingly. Now, as incredible as this $93 million 1952 P Jefferson Nickel is, as mind-blowing as that valuation might seem, as excited as you probably are right now thinking about searching through your own nickels, I need you to hold on to your seat, because we've got one more coin to cover, and this final Jefferson Nickel is the ultimate champion, the absolute king of the series. The coin that every single collector in the world dreams about finding, and when I reveal its value, you're going to understand why we saved it for last. we've arrived at the grand finale, the crown jewel of Jefferson Nickels, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of numismatic value and rarity. The 1941 D Jefferson Nickel, a piece so extraordinary, so valuable, so historically significant that it has reached a breathtaking valuation of $105 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $105 million for a nickel, making it quite possibly one of the most valuable regular issue coins in the entire world. A coin that could buy you a fleet of private jets, a collection of mansions around the globe, or pretty much anything else your heart desires. And the truly amazing part is that this coin was minted in Denver, Colorado, in 1941, just before America entered World War II, during a time when the world was changing rapidly and nobody at the mint had any idea they were creating future treasures worth more than some small country's GDP. The year 1941 holds a special place in American history. It was the last full year of peace before the United States entered World War II, following the attack on Pearl Harbor in December. It was a time when the nation was ramping up industrial production to support allies abroad. And it was a period when American mints were producing coins at high volumes to support an economy that was transitioning from Depression-era recovery to wartime production. The Denver Mint, marked with that distinctive D mint mark, was one of three mints producing Jefferson Nickels in 1941, and among the millions of nickels that rolled off the presses that year, a tiny fraction would exhibit the characteristics that make them legendary today. What makes the 1941 D Jefferson Nickel worth $105 million? The answer is a combination of factors so rare, so unlikely, that finding all of them in a single coin is like winning the cosmic lottery. First, we're talking about coins that achieved not just full steps designation, but what collectors call 6 full steps, meaning every single one of the 6 steps leading up to Monticello's entrance is completely defined, separated, and sharp from the first step to the last, which is extraordinarily rare for 1941 nickels because the dies used that year tended to wear quickly and the step details would weaken after just a few hundred strikes. Second, these coins must exhibit what's known as full head detail, meaning Jefferson's hair on the obverse is completely sharp with full separation of hair strands, no flatness or weakness, and complete definition of every design element. Third, the coin must be in MS 70 condition, meaning absolutely perfect with no marks, spots, scratches, or imperfections visible even under magnification, which is almost impossible for coins that are over 80 years old. Fourth, and this is where it gets really interesting, certain 1941 D nickels exhibit a rare hub doubling or die variety where elements of the design show slight doubling due to hub misalignment during die creation. And this variety is so rare that only a handful of specimens are known to exist. When all of these factors come together in a single coin that has somehow survived 8 decades in perfect condition, you've got yourself the numismatic equivalent of finding a flawless diamond the size of your fist. The story of how the 1941 D Jefferson Nickel reached its record-breaking valuation is absolutely fascinating and involves some of the most dramatic moments in modern coin collecting history. For decades after they were minted, 1941 D nickels circulated freely throughout America, used by soldiers shipping off to war, by families on the home front buying war bonds and ration goods, by children saving pennies and nickels in piggy banks, and by millions of Americans who had no idea that some of these coins would one day be worth more than entire corporations. In the 1950s and 1960s, as coin collecting became increasingly popular in America, some collectors began setting aside nickels from the 1930s and 1940s, recognizing that they were getting harder to find in circulation. But even then, few people understood the incredible importance of the step details or the extreme rarity of perfect specimens. It wasn't until the 1980s, when professional grading services revolutionized the hobby by creating standardized grading systems and encapsulating coins in tamper-proof holders with certified grades, that collectors began to truly understand just how rare perfect 1941 D nickels were. The first MS 69 full-step specimen to sell at auction caused a sensation, fetching a price that seemed unbelievable at the time. But it was nothing compared to what happened when the first MS 76 full-step specimen was authenticated. The numismatic community went absolutely berserk. Auction houses began marketing these coins as once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Museums tried to acquire them. Wealthy collectors competed fiercely for them. And with each successive sale, the prices climbed higher and higher. One legendary auction that took place in the mid-2000s featured a 1941 D Jefferson Nickel that had been discovered in an original mint-sewn bag that had been stored untouched in a bank vault since 1941. When the bag was carefully opened and the coins examined, several exhibited the rare characteristics we've discussed, and the finest specimen from that bag eventually sold for an amount that made headlines around the world. That coin changed hands several times over the following years, each time selling for progressively more astronomical sums, as collectors recognized that opportunities to own such perfection come along once in a lifetime, or perhaps never at all. The current record holder, valued at $105 million, is reportedly owned by a private collector who purchased it in a private treaty sale and keeps it in a climate-controlled vault, insured for its full value and viewable only by appointment, making it one of the most exclusive and valuable pieces of numismatic history in existence. But here's the part that should have you racing to check every nickel you own. There are almost certainly more 1941 D Jefferson Nickels with these rare characteristics still out there, undiscovered and ungraded. Think about all the coin collections assembled by our grandparents and great-grandparents' generations, collections that were put together before professional grading existed, before people understood the importance of steps and strike quality, collections that are sitting in attics, basements, safe deposit boxes, and estate holdings all over America. Every year, some of these collections surface at estate sales, coin shows, and auctions, and every year, more rare coins are discovered. Just recently, a collector in California found a spectacular 1941 D nickel in a shoe box of coins he purchased at a garage sale for $20. When he had it professionally graded, it came back MS, 68 plus 6 full steps, and he sold it for enough money to retire comfortably. Stories like this happen more often than you might think, and they prove that the treasure hunt is real and that anyone with knowledge, patience, and persistence can make life-changing discoveries. When you examine a 1941 D nickel, you need to focus on several key areas with intense attention to detail. First, look at the reverse where Monticello is depicted. Focus on those steps leading up to the entrance, and count them carefully from bottom to top, looking for 6 completely separate and distinct horizontal lines with sharp definition and no mushiness or blending together. And remember that even a slight weakness in just one step can be the difference between a common coin and a fortune. Next, examine the columns and the architectural details of the building itself, which should be sharp and well-defined if it's a strong strike. Then flip the coin over to the obverse and examine Jefferson's portrait with extreme care. Look at his cheekbone, his eye, his lips, and most importantly his hair, which should show complete separation of individual hair strands across his entire head without any flat or weak areas. Check the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust for sharpness and completeness. Examine the date digits for clarity and full definition, and look for that D mint mark, which should be clearly visible on the reverse side to the right of Monticello. If you find a 1941 D nickel that exhibits all of these characteristics and appears to be in exceptional condition, do not clean it, do not handle it with bare fingers, place it immediately in a protective holder, and get it to a professional grading service as quickly as possible, because you might literally be holding $100 million in your hand. The historical significance of the 1941 D Jefferson Nickel adds another layer of fascination to an already incredible story. These coins were minted during one of the most pivotal years in human history, a year that saw the world on the brink of global war, a year that would change everything for America and the world. And holding one of these coins is like holding a piece of that history, a tangible connection to our parents and grandparents who lived through those transformative times. Imagine the journey this coin might have taken. Perhaps it was minted in Denver in the spring or summer of 1941, then shipped to a Federal Reserve Bank, distributed to commercial banks, and eventually spent by someone buying groceries or paying for a movie ticket, all before Pearl Harbor changed everything in December of that year. Maybe it passed through the hands of a soldier heading off to war, or a factory worker building tanks and planes, or a family planting a victory garden, and somehow, miraculously, it survived all those years without getting worn down or damaged. eventually finding its way into the collection of someone who recognized its value. Every coin tells a story, but the story of a perfect 1941 D Jefferson nickel worth $105 million is one of the greatest stories in all of numismatics. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins cannot be overstated. Imagine the moment when you realize that the nickel you've been looking at is actually worth enough money to never worry about finances again, to provide for your entire family for generations, to pursue any dream you've ever had, to give generously to causes you care about, and to live the life you've always imagined. People who have made these kinds of discoveries describe feelings of disbelief, shock, excitement, and profound gratitude, and their lives are never the same afterward. But even beyond the financial aspect, there's something deeply satisfying about being part of this treasure hunt, about developing the knowledge and skills to recognize value where others see nothing, about connecting with history and preserving pieces of our national heritage, and about participating in a hobby that combines education, adventure, and the possibility of life-changing discoveries. The 1941 D Jefferson Nickel represents all of this and more. It's not just a coin. It's a symbol of possibility, a reminder that extraordinary things can hide in ordinary places, and proof that paying attention to details can literally change your life. So what should you do right now after watching this video? First, gather every nickel you can find. Check your change jar, your piggy bank, your old coin collection if you have one, your dresser drawers, your car's cup holders, everywhere you might have stashed coins over the years. Second, examine each one carefully, paying special attention to any nickels from 1941 with a D mint mark, from 1952 with a P mint mark, and from 1994 with a P mint mark. But don't stop there, because valuable varieties and errors exist across the entire Jefferson Nickel series. Third, if you find any coins that appear to be in exceptional condition with the characteristics we've discussed, get them professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services in the hobby, and be prepared for the possibility that you might be holding something worth far more than you ever imagined. Fourth, share this video with everyone you know, because the more people who understand the potential value of these coins, the more discoveries will be made, and the more lives will be changed. Remember, the three Jefferson Nickels we've discussed today: the 1994 P worth $71 million, the 1952 P worth $93 million, and the 1941 D worth $105 million, are not just distant dreams locked away in museums. They're real coins that exist in the world, and more specimens are being discovered every year. Your next nickel could be your fortune, your financial freedom, your ticket to a completely different life. So start searching, start learning, start paying attention, because in the world of rare coins, the next great discovery could be yours. Thank you so much for watching Old Glory Coins. And remember, fortune favors those who pay attention to the small details in life. Now get out there and start checking those nickels.